Yeah, so just feel how as soon as you get the bar behind the neck, it just straightens up the spine, especially the mid-spine. It does tend to sort of hunch a bit when you meditate. So you want the feeling that the thymus, which is this point here, the upper chest, is sort of protruding and reaching upwards. And then the mid-back can come in and have a feeling that it's settling down the spine. Okay, and now just start turning, but again, just gently keep tension in the waist. And so we want to get used to instituting a protective tension. So getting rid of the chronic tension that can't relax, but always maintaining a toned, what Nitzan calls contra. Something you can push against, something that will return energy, something that will just give you a bit of fight. Just take it to the limit, and then just let the limit, which if it's the limit of your body, it will be elastic and it will spring you back. If it's the limit of your mind, then it will tend not to be. So remember, in Tai Chi, we're using the body to retrain the mind. The mind is not a thing in itself. So what you're mindful of all the time is the equilibrium that your being is. So something in me is still in the middle of this and just observing and always just re-equilibrating. Any distraction will take me out of equilibrium. And the worst distraction is the distraction of self, when the mind starts chatting. As soon as the mind chats, you're no longer present and you're insulting the environment. And everything that environment holds, including the company that you're in. And then just coordinate it with the breathing in some way. And then it becomes Qigong. So the exercise becomes the diaphragm in a way. So the exercise becomes responsible for pulling air in and then squeezing it out. Pulling air in and then squeezing it out. And it doesn't have to be the actual air. It's just a sense, as you breathe in, just a sense of expansion. Something in me is expanding as I turn to the side. And then something in me contracts as I come back to the front. So what we're looking at all the time is the muscles that are being stretched rather than the muscles that are tightening. Yeah. So my working mind is in the muscles that are tightening, but my listening, interested, curious mind is in the muscles that are stretching. So you can think of the working mind as being like a heaviness, it's like the workhorse that's trudging along. And then the other mind is like a real curious lightness. And if anything, the equilibrium we're after is just the equilibrium between those two minds. And that's what the middle way of Buddhism is really. It's the equilibrium of these two extreme minds. We don't want those two extremes to embrace and just become an average. They dance together. So the mind without the heavy aspect would be like a child's mind. Always active, always curious, always happy, really. And then the mind without the light aspect would be the adult mind, the average depressed adult mind that just goes out to work. And if ever its sort of light mind is activated, it's normally through its own children. So it lives vicariously in that respect. So when these two minds are in equilibrium, there's a sense that you just don't want to stop. So you hit a groove. Okay. And now let's just do this tipping side to side. Again, feeling the two sides. One side is contracting to bring you down, the other side is being stretched. So actively contract. Don't let just gravity tip you over. And just feel the point where you stop. You want that to feel like you haven't really stopped. You've just gone into real slow motion. And then it can start up again very easily. It just has to reverse. If it stops, then it has to restart. And that will just require like a burst of energy. You want it to be smooth, a smooth continuum. I mean, spirit is the opposite of that, of course. I mean, spirit is very like little packets, quanta of spirit. But energy is very smooth. Ooh. Good. And then just feel the posture. Just let your arms really relax. So the arms are heavy and they're really pulling the stick into the back of the neck. So my thymus is pushing upwards. Now just feel the tailbone. So you want that to sort of really relax and open out. So when we, in our riding horse, when we push the min meng backwards, we don't want that to bunch the tail up. The tail to be relaxed and active. When it relaxes, it feels like it's wriggling away, like it's really curious. So we want to reclaim our tail. So you can imagine that it's growing, unraveling and sort of extending, growing, becoming something that's more than vestigial. So remember, we're always trying to waken up our vestiges. So the tail in particular, but then the little toes, little fingers, and then any others that you can feel, because lots of vestiges will wake up as you work on energy. So originally they would have been part of our spiritual or spirited armor or apparatus, without which we wouldn't really have survived in the wild. Okay. And now let's just tipping over each knee. Just feel like you want to kiss your knee. And then feel the muscles in the back that straighten you back up. You don't have to lean back. Just turn to the other leg and down here. Yeah, so just feel the muscles that are working. Let's have our mind in the heavy bit. So here my belly tightens to draw me down and my back starts stretching and tightening as well to stop me from going too far. And then my back tightens more actively. Belly is still supporting. Yeah, so the activity is just shifting from front to back, and the muscle that's becoming less active is supporting. Yeah, so there's always this regulating force. So gradually as I exercise, what I want is for those two forces, the active one and the regulating one, to get stronger and stronger. So this is what I mean by intensification. So here the bellies are really tightening. So my back has to really tighten as well to support that. And then really pull those muscles in the back, and the belly has to tighten. Yeah, so I'm just trying to make the equilibrium more intense. So the forces that are in equilibrium have to get stronger and stronger. And then also feel the muscles that are turning you to the other knee. So those are the same muscles that were turning me as I was twisting. Yes, so hard work is good for you. And you're more likely to get it right when you're working hard than when you're not. Because when you're working hard, it forces the spirit to rouse. And when the spirit's in presence, in evidence, then it's much more likely to hit that equilibrium point. So a spirited equilibrium will always vibrate. It will shake and shimmer. Great. Okay. So now let's try same principles, but just pushing the bar up and down. So I get underneath the bar and I tense the muscles in the back to push it up. And then I get on top of the bar and I use the muscles in the belly to pull it down. So all the time trying to get into that midriff waist area. So no sense of stopping. The more intense it gets, the more like a fight it feels. So your hands are trying to pull the stick apart. They're twisting the stick. You're trying to get as much of your auxiliary musculature involved as possible. So it's not just those primary muscles in the lower back and the belly. It's the twisting muscles. The muscles that are sort of involved in your inner processes, like your digestion and way. And now let's try the pulling one. So just trying to stretch the stick in the middle. So just pulling the hands apart. You can just start off gentle, almost like it's just in the mind to start with, the mind and the spirit. And then the body can kick in. So this is something that John always stressed. Yeah, he said, it's fine to flog the body with the spirit, but never flog the spirit with the body. So my hands are twisting a bit. Just feel the fibers in the wood. If you've got a wooden stick, wood's just a little bit more alive. It feels like you're just trying to you'd like it to break, but with energy rather than force. So it gives a little bit of twist and a stretching feeling. And then just push. So now you're trying to squash the middle of the stick. And it should feel, when you get into energy, it will feel as though there is movement there on a sort of micro level. And then pull. And breathe in as you pull. So again, that sense of expansion across the shoulders, across the chest. The eyes are getting wider, the forehead is stretching open, your jaw is releasing. And then pushing and breathing out. So a slow deflation. And then just pulling again. And the slow inflation, expansion. And just imagine like your heart is like a chrysanthemum bud, which is slowly unfurling and blooming. And then it slowly fills up, refills. And one more. Pulling. So don't go all the way back, just sort of to normal. Okay, now let's just finish with just a few of those going over the head. Just feel what needs to intensify inside to allow your arms to just go back without bending. Ooh. Yeah, so just feel it as it goes over the top and drops down. That's the feeling of having no arms. It's almost like your arms disengage from the shoulders for a moment. So just feel how straight your spine has to be in order not to have arms. Ooh. Yeah, and just feel the spine. It's really straight. So the mid back, which is normally bulging backwards a little bit, really pushes in. The thymus pushes up. So that's how it should be all the time. And if it's not, then you're mildly depressed. Okay. Okay, let's just try just a few of the, just leaning back and pedaling. We want our standing postures, of which riding horse is the basic one, to be in equilibrium rather than held forcefully. There has to be this constant process of relaxing, because underneath that, we're in a constant process of getting tense, especially when the legs start protesting, which they will. So I'm opening to gravity. I'm letting gravity pull me down. Yeah. But also feel the draw of the earth as being something that comes out of the earth, rather than it being like a weight from above that's pressing you down. Feel like these tendrils or arms coming up and just trying to drag you into the earth. And then feel the strength sort of gradually growing up the bones. And you'd like that to get all the way to the top of the head. So it's like your relaxation is inviting like some sort of hardness from the earth to come up and infuse your bones, your skeleton. And just feel the important place is the sacrum, because that tends to freeze up in order to create these holding forces, and we want it to become an energetic equilibrium. Let the tail really relax. Okay, and now let's just breathe. So again, just starting to operate the waist, not by turning, but by alternating belly and back. My back muscles tightening, my belly supporting, my belly tightening, my back muscles supporting. all the time, trying to maintain that equilibrium. So we set up the action, we set up the exercise, and then the mind just scans the body, the tension, all the way from the feet, from the sole of the feet, all the way to the tips of the fingers and the top of the head. So one of the things, when I was working with John personally, a phrase that he would often say is, forget the technique, get into the energy. So the technique is like a vehicle that if you let it, it will take you into the unknown. It will take you somewhere you've never been before. So feel this action, it's only the belly. So you don't want the tail to bunch up here. So in other words, you don't want it to become tight-arsed. Just enough tension in the anus to stop yourself from shitting yourself. Yeah, so relaxing the anus is difficult for the English because we're the most tight-arsed people on the planet. Okay. And now just bringing in turning, not by turning ostensibly, but just by bringing in single weightedness. So just getting the two sides of the body doing opposite things in a very gentle, subtle way. And that will just bring in a turn. It will necessitate a turn. You'll just find yourself turning without having consciously turned. And it doesn't matter which way you turn. You could turn towards the fist or away from it. And it doesn't have to be the open hand facing up and the fist facing down. It could be the other way. So you just got to play with these things. 1, 2, Yeah, so it's no longer front and back, or as well as front and back being the active and supporting. It's the left and the right. So it's like each time we introduce a new level of complexity, it's like it doubles. And then just get the toes coming in as well. Toes and fingers. So the hand that's opening, the toes that side also open. And then it's the toes curling on the ground that start the turning and the moving into that foot. So someone watching you will see the hand. The hand looks like it's the active component, but it's really the foot beneath it. Ooh. All the time, keeping the sacrum relaxed, keeping the tail relaxed. So the tail will start really wriggling, swinging from side to side. Yeah, so just feel the tail wants to reach down into the foot that's opening up. And it does it when I turn away from it. My tail is behind me, I can't see it. And so my tail will tend to probe those blind spots, those dark areas. This is why it's so important. If we want this sense of eyes in the back of our head, which any fighter would love, then the tail becomes really important. Whee. Yeah, so we're just trying to change ourselves, transform ourselves from a worrier into a warrior. So a worrier is basically, someone who worries, but basically someone who indulges in excess thinking. They think too much. And a warrior is basically someone that's just learned to quieten their mind so that they can abide in the world of energy. The world of spirit. Ooh. So when you worry, there will be no spirit. So the way we approach it is just by listening to the equilibrium. If you're in equilibrium, then you're energetic. And you cannot think to yourself. As soon as you go into your mind and start thinking, as soon as you lose the here and now, then the situation becomes forceful and you lose the energy, you lose the equilibrium. So it's very simple, really, and very clear. If you're honest with yourself, then you can't go wrong as long as you practice. And then just take it into that first warm-up exercise. But it's basically the same thing. It's all coming from the same place. It's coming from the foot on the ground, opening and then closing. Just feel the foot that opens. It really opens when I can no longer see it. Yeah. So it's a very different mind that is with spirit. So that's what I'm really trying to wake up. And to wake it up, you really have to sort of just sort of imprison the other mind. So the other mind just become locked in the doing, in the musculature. So the foot that's tightening, it's as it tightens and my weight comes into it, slowly becomes less energy, less spirit. So that's where my mind is. My mind is with the trudge, with the plod, with the work. And then my spirit, my other mind, my bright, empty mind, can be with the other side. Yeah, so you're like a feeding animal, a feeding wild animal. You know, part of you is just really with that carcass, just trying to sort of tear it and bring it into your body. But another part of you is really aware of what's all around so that you can be ready for something that's trying to steal your kill or kill you. So part of me is really hunched like this. That's the part that's, you know, devouring. But another part of me is doing this. And that's the part of me that's looking out and reaching out. Okay, so let's just bring it back to riding horse. Okay, now let's just get the little bit of the reverse breathing just to sort of intensify the belly even more. So breathing through the small hole. So I'm drawing the hands and the belly in by breathing in now. So breathing in and then breathing out. So again, just feel the belly's tightening, the back is having to relax into that supporting tension. And then the back tenses and the belly has to relax out of its active tension and into a supporting one. The supporting tension feels very much like a balloon. You know, when you blow up a balloon, the balloon is just supporting that air. It's not doing anything to it. If you started pressing the balloon, then you'd be doing something to the air. But so you just have to judge the size of the small hole, just to keep you on the edge of suffocation. Okay. And now just drawing from side to side. Again, it's the same as the turning we were doing. So we're really using the foot. Foot is really opening and then it clutches. Yeah, so this seems easy because we've done a lot of it, but actually this is actually the most difficult thing really, because the temptation when I come into the leg is always just to produce this holding force in the leg. And then that will just block off the hip joint and there'll be no energy. So you really need to turn. So I really need to turn into this leg. Like we know when we're moving from bow and arrow to bow and arrow. So that as I turn here, this leg is sending energy through me into the opposite hand. Yes, if you feel the cross energy, if you're working on the cross energy, you're more likely to remain in equilibrium. So you won't want to bring too much weight into that front foot. And the moving from side to side, from leg to leg, is much more from the turning. So from the two sides alternating in this sort of elastic way. Yeah, so you can really feel this in the form. Yeah. If you step too long, or if you're too, you know, we just have to look at the form all the time, because basically we've got into bad habits. Yeah. So I'm having to do it all the time. You know, each time I do the form, it's like I want it to become a stranger. I don't want it to feel too familiar. Familiarity breeds contempt. Now, that is really true. So I'm basically trying to turn everything into a stranger. And that spirit, when your spirit comes up, you're a stranger. You're a stranger to yourself. So we're becoming a stranger. People are strange when you're a stranger. And so when we turn like this, when we're moving basically from foot to foot, by turning, it's like both legs can remain in this equilibrium. Neither one gets too much of an upper hand. So it is very much like the yin-yang symbol. And so again, it just becomes the first warm-up exercise. And now let's just try, now just figure of eighting. And again, just trying to keep the spine pretty much in the middle. So I'm not swinging from leg to leg like this. I'm turning and just here I'm really feeling something in me has to expand to get around this foot rather than pushing my hips around it. Yeah. Something in my spirit has to really open up and expand. And then I can enclose it. And then I turn to this side and way. So it's in the mind and the spirit. Spirit is just an aspect of mind, but a mind that we're totally unfamiliar with, which again is a good thing. The mind we're familiar with is the bad mind, is the mind that has become ego, has become self. Ooh. And then just let it come into like holding the ball. So this is fundamental to Tai Chi, this posture. This feeling that you've got a big, chunky yin-yang symbol in there. But it's just the figure of eight exercise. I'm going round the foot with my expansion. Ooh. Yeah, so if your eyes don't swell with wonder, then you're not doing it right. You know, John used to say when he'd teach uprooting, and everyone was just using too much force or not enough energy, you know, he'd always say it's all in the eyes. Yeah. But of course, it's not our normal eyes, because our normal eyes are so linked to the ego. So the eyes that can just spark and just let spirit out. Okay, so let's bring it to riding horse. Yeah, so in one sense, you're really settled. But in another sense, you're just ready to just leap into action, to spring into action. Stop activity and return to stillness, and that stillness will be even more active. So that's the stillness of equilibrium. Yeah, it's really whoa. And then the stronger we get, the more we can allow that equilibrium to vibrate. Yeah, so it's not a strength that blocks out energy and makes everything the way you want it. Yeah. When I first came to Israel, and Ronit sent me into therapy to try and make me bearable to live with. Didn't work. But the first session, this therapist, she said to me, "You have to become strong." And I said, "What do you mean by that?" She says, "To know what you want and to know how to get it." Yeah. And I just thought, wow, that's probably one of the most disgusting things I've ever heard. Yeah. Pure selfishness. Yeah. So we don't want that strength. We want the strength that enables us to go out into even more wild terrains and be stretched even more. And it's like the courage that a soldier, imagine those First World War soldiers, going over the top of the trenches was pretty much certain death. And so what sort of mind would they have had to make that step? Yeah. Okay. Now let's just try just a little bit of the stepping. So again, just with this feeling of the animal that's each time you come into a foot, it's like you're devouring the ground underneath it. It's like your toes and your fingers and your jaw are biting into that ground. And that enables the other foot to become free in such a way that it can express that light side of your mind Yeah, so just really feel the ground, really as though you're just, as though the hand is actually just trying to reach down. Yeah, so when we're trying to sort of just dissolve this break in the hips, so I want a mind that's always dipping into the ground. Even if you can't reach it, there's a sense that, you know, you're dipping down underneath the ground with your hand and your mind, and just drawing some of that energy up into your dantian. So your belly is feeding of the earth, but not through the mouth. And you can just feel it that, you know, there's like a conceptual, we conceptualize the ground and our relationship with it in a certain way. It's something down there to be pushed away from. So when you really try and get down into it in a effective and sincere way, then the normal mind, the ego mind, which is very hard and forceful, just has to take a back seat. So this is what we're trying to do all the time. I'm trying to make my relationships right. Most of them are not, especially the one you have with the ground. Really, that's your fundamental one, really. The one you have with the ground beneath your feet, the one you have with the sky above your head. If they're wrong, then every other one will be wrong as well, including the relationships you have with your loved ones. So the real difficulty with relationships is that realm of the familiar again. We don't want relationships that will hold us back, that will keep us locked into some sort of what John would call a steady state. So in other words, we want those relationships to be in equilibrium. There's always a give and take. Way. So I'm listening. I'm in a state of absolute reverence. I revere everything. And the root of that word is just verere, the Latin. To be fear, to be afraid. Yeah, it's all fear-based. Despite what the New Age people say, you know, that fear is bad. Without fear, there's no respect, there's no reverence, there's no veneration, there's no awe. So we're trying to get back to a superstitious state, the state we were in before we knew better. So the word superstitious, etymologically, it just means to stand in awe. So to be in a sense of wonder, with a sense of wonder. Way. So to be with spirit. When you're frightened, when you're awestruck or awe-stricken, then spirit will have to come up. So if you're not afraid, there's no spirit. So it's not an absolute terror. It's more like the fear you would have of your father, or the fear that you would have of the teacher. Yeah. The fear that forces you to be at your very, very best. No carelessness. It's absolute respect. This is what John demanded, and it's what he talked about all the time. And just feel it. It's so tempting to replace what's there with a mental image of what's there. So it's very different from actually working with the ground and working with a mental image of the ground. So we just want to wake up to what's there and just get rid of all of those conceptualizations, because they just lock us into a totally artificial world, what Olson called the human universe. The human universe is built on discourse, on language. And as such, it is always at least one step removed from reality. So I'm relating to the ground, not the word, not the image, but the actual thing, that hard, cold thing beneath my foot. And I'm just feeling it. How willing is it just to accept me, to support me? The ground, the earth is the mother. So as I go into the foot, oh, it's a miracle. It doesn't give way. It holds me up. Yeah, so we've lost the ground because we've lost our root, and we've lost the sky or the heavens because we have smartphones. And so our attention is just funneling down a virtual tube, and we've just lost what's all around us. You. Okay. So now let's just bring it back. And again, just feel the ground. Yeah. If I'm doing this, basically, if I'm straightening my legs, then I'm pushing myself away from the ground. And I'm not just doing it physically, I'm doing it mentally as well. My mind takes on the attitude of sort of just pushing something away because it's unsavory and I'm better than that. Yeah. So what we want is this feeling that the legs are always pulling me down. I'm trying to become more and more humble, more and more of the hummus. Or I'm not sure how you say it. It's hummus, isn't it? It's not hummus. Hummus is what you eat. So the word humble just comes from hummus, the ground, the soil. So I want to get into it. I want to get dirty. Okay, so let's just bring it up. Yeah, so just, we want to lose the rectilinear, lose the straight lines and the right angles. And the best way for that is just to feel yourself turning, even if you're physically barely turning. You can still feel like a turning oscillation from side to side. Just to like flush away the man-made, the artificial. Yeah, so this is the posture really where it's most difficult to sort of keep the ground, because we've sort of straightened the legs. So you must have a sense that your desire to bend the legs is stronger than your desire to straighten them. Yeah, so there should be a sense that in real slow motion, you're gradually getting closer to the ground. You're getting to the place you want to be. So that's what meditation teaches me. It teaches you to want to be down there, because it's quieter. So it's belly. Belly is with the earth. Head is with the, and heart is with the world. Or it should be. Okay, so let's leave it.